Unfortunately, we have reached a time when the leader of the Western world, the American president, makes the Russian dictator smile and the European allies cry.
It is abundantly clear that the rules-based world order is under pressure. Let's clearly and firmly adhere to our values. Let's not reinvent them, but try to make their application more consistent. Allow me to conclude. And that is already not easy.
In principle, after Trump's latest antics, it's hard to consider him the leader of the Western world. Moreover, he himself does not want to be one. He feels more comfortable and pleased in the company of Putin. There, the idyll is more intense than in the movie Ghost. Donald does not condemn Putin for war crimes, and Putin does not condemn Donald for anything at all. Although according to modern Russian mythology, being born an American is already an original sin.
Therefore, we consider you deceitful, despicable scum, just so you have no doubts. Therefore, we absolutely believe that not a single word coming from Washington can be trusted at all. We are trying to negotiate with those people who still had human zoos in Europe in the mid-50s.
Trump has always presented an alternatively gifted vision of the Ukrainian-Russian war. His rhetoric personally and that of his conspiracy guard, led by Musk, have never been particularly friendly to Ukraine. But what Trump started doing after he settled into the presidential chair shocked even his most ardent supporters.
Practically everyone is in absolute shock. Not only us, average, everyday Americans who support him wholeheartedly are, but also members of Congress are taken aback. I could give you plenty of speeches from both senators and Republicans, friends of Ukraine, who are simply outraged by what Trump is spewing today. We have many, explanations for this. One of them is even his physical condition. Isn't it dementia? After all, agree, he's almost 80.
Trump immediately chose for himself the good and the bad. And for him, Russia is good, which attacked Ukraine to seize territories. And Ukraine is bad because it didn't want to give up its lands, and citizens to occupation, and started to defend itself.
According to Trump, it is widely believed that the leadership of Ukraine allegedly allowed this war, which in fact should never have started. Thus, the American president indirectly accused Ukraine, and in particular President Zelenskyy, of provoking and unleashing a full-scale war by Russia against Ukraine. This statement aligns with Moscow's declarations. Furthermore, Trump stated that Ukraine should not complain about not being invited to the negotiations. The war should not have started 3 years ago. Instead, a deal could have been made with Moscow.
Trump explicitly says Ukrainians are to blame for the war because they did not agree to capitulate 3 years ago. That is, to make a deal with Moscow on its unreasonable terms.
I am really very disappointed. I heard that they were upset about not getting a place at the negotiations. They had that place for 3 years, and even long before that. All of this could have been settled very easily. Even an inexperienced negotiator could have settled this many years ago.
It's funny that Trump himself has repeatedly broken his own promises to stop the war. First, he wanted to do it in 1 second, even before the elections. Then in a day, then in 100 days, now 6 months. And soon, it will be 3 years.
Can you possibly stop the war in Ukraine in a day?
Yes, I can. I will end this war between the countries in a day. It will take even less time. I think it can be finished in a day. I will end this war in a day. It will take a day. I would make a deal in a day.
Perhaps Trump really expected to end the war in 1 day. He just wanted to call Zelenskyy and order him to surrender, after which he could calmly engage in dealings with the Kremlin ghouls. But the president of Ukraine politely declined such a generous offer.
I think the reality is that Trump's entire strategy seems in fact, completely logical and entirely predictable. If you understand that he urgently wants good relations with Vladimir Putin. And what currently most hinders the United States and Russia from having good relations is Ukraine. So if only Ukraine didn't exist, then the US and Russia wouldn't have a conflict in any way, and we could agree on everything.
Kiev's refusal to capitulate became Donald's first personal affront. He genuinely doesn't understand how anyone could refuse him. The king, of the world, the emperor of the solar system, and the supreme god of Twitter.
What the hell on earth?
Trump decided to show his utmost disrespect to Kiev and personally to Zelensky. So he presented the Ukrainians with a burdensome, exploitative agreement for the transfer of resources. Meanwhile, he began deceitful, separate negotiations with Putin. Without Ukraine's way, without Europe, he started dividing the world with terrorists behind the scenes over vodka.
Listen, if the President of the United States, God forbid, has gone mad, then we are all in deep trouble. Literally the whole world, eh? Trump cannot perceive Russia, Putin as well as an equal player to himself. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, what the hell? They use donkeys on the front lines and attack in passenger cars. And they are indeed generally in the deepest trouble, with minimal advancement on the front and horrific losses. Why should he suddenly make such concessions now?
The president of Ukraine predictably refused to sign the rare earth paper and recognize any negotiation results that took place without Ukraine's participation.
But when we got to the details, there are still no security guarantees. If Ukraine opens everything up to the USA, and they invest and want to expect something, then the specific request from the USA should clearly state what they are providing Ukraine in terms of security guarantees.
And Ukraine considers any negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine as having no results. We cannot recognize any matters or agreements about us without us, and indeed, we will not acknowledge such agreements.
This offended Trump even more. And then, as they say, Donald went off. He switched to Russia Today mode and unleashed the entire load of Russian propaganda from the past 3 years. He claimed that Zelenskyy is a dictator who has usurped power, that he has almost zero public support, that he is the one against peace, and that Ukraine is the aggressor that attacked Russia.
We have indeed witnessed this disinformation. We truly and undoubtedly understand that it certainly originates from Russia. We understand this, and we have evidence. Unfortunately, President Trump, whom I hold in great respect as a leader of a nation we highly respect, unfortunately lives in this disinformation space.
Vice President Vance was so agitated by Zelensky's speech that he began threatening all sorts of Pennsylvania punishments for slandering the saintly Trump. But Trump is clearly under the influence of disinformation, or is deliberately lying. After all, for him, Putin is not a dictator, but a democratic leader, even though his main opposition figure was killed in prison. And Putin held elections in occupied territories, which in itself makes him illegitimate from the standpoint of international law. However, for Trump, this is normal.
Well, all right. That'll do.
The fact that Ukraine, during a full-scale war, did not hold elections against the will of the parliament, the majority of the people, and the constitution is a sign of dictatorship.
Why did they even let him out of the hospital?
Regarding the ratings, it's actually funny because it was Trump whose public trust level dropped by 10% in less than a month of his presidency. And Zelenskyy is supported by more than 50% of Ukrainians.
The question isn't even about what kind of support I have. The question is about what is important, the ratings that we pay attention to. The number one question today is how to protect ourselves from shelling. According to all the polls, this is the number one issue for Ukrainians.
Trump got offended by Zelenskyy and the entire Ukrainian people because they brushed him off and didn't fall for his whims. Due to his resentment, Donald decided to risk all of America. He spent too much time with the pale cigarette butt and forgot that he is not Tsar of Muscovy, but President of United States. And American people will not allow him to misbehave. American congressmen, senators, journalists, and politicians have spoken out in support of Ukraine and the President of Ukraine. Many of them did not mince words.
In what world does he live in? What world does he live in? This not only contradicts the facts and the truth, but is also a disgusting betrayal of a country that sheds blood, fought and died for freedom. The president's capitulation is pathetic and weak.
Even his fellow Republicans are sharply criticizing Trump. Congressman Don Bacon specifically called Putin a criminal and a dictator, and also refused to live with Trump in George Orwell's world. Senator Roger Wicker went even further and said that Trump's best friend, and incidentally the Kremlin's mole, should be imprisoned for life or executed as a war criminal.
It's hard to disagree with that.
Former U.S. ambassador to the swamps, Michael McFaul, was almost consumed with shame and apologized for President Trump's recent statements.
First of all, as an American who communicates with Ukrainian media, I want to apologize for President Trump's words. As an American, I am ashamed that he says such things, which, as we know, do not correspond to reality. When he said that President Zelensky's approval rating is 4%, that's simply not true. And it's very easy indeed to find numerous different polls to prove it. Secondly, I find it terrible that he calls Zelensky a dictator while negotiating with Putin and never criticizing Putin.
European leaders and the official UN representative also unanimously stated that Trump's words about Zelensky's illegitimacy are nonsense, absorbed from Skabeva's milk.
Take note, the same event can occur, but the interpretation of this event matters. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter that a strike was made. Well, how? It's important, but that's not the sacramental meaning.
You are truly the most absolutely hopeless person I have ever met.
Obviously, Trump is not all of America. Obviously, Trump is currently placing his own ambitions and grievances above national and international security. We don't know why Trump is aggressively inclined towards Ukraine. Maybe Moscow has compromising material on him, gathered from past close ties. Maybe for handing over Ukraine, Putin promised Donald unimaginable wealth in the form of gas pipelines and all the mines of the occupied Donbass. Or maybe Trump just fell into a vat of Solovyov's videotapes. We cannot know this. Therefore, let's not take away Musk's bread and engage in conspiracy theories. Then it turns out that this is exactly how Donald Trump envisions America's greatness. Partnership with terrorists and conflict with friends and allies. How much such greatness will appeal to the Americans themselves is a big question.
No. God. No. God, please, no! No!
But let's not be pessimistic. After all, we are talking about Trump. It is quite possible that tomorrow he will radically change his rhetoric, hand over nuclear weapons to Ukraine, and call Putin a mediocre comedian, which obviously is true.
A young soldier is asked, if, let's say, 20 terrorists are coming at you, what will you do? I will take an Uzi and start shooting. Good job. And if tanks are coming at you, I will take a grenade launcher and defend myself. Good job. And if planes are flying overhead, tanks are coming and terrorists are advancing, he says, General, am I the only one fighting in our army?
Well, there you go, right? That's a good joke, huh?
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.